For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Talking Horses, presented by our friends at Saratoga Water. I'm Andy Serling, soon to be joined by Travis Stone. Talk about today's Jockey Club Gold Cup 12-race extravaganza as we hit the final weekend and day number 38 here at Saratoga. Head over to Naira Bets if you're not a member of Naira Bets. Use the promo code SPA200. We will match the $200 of your initial deposit. Play through Naira Bets. Support racing in New York and keep the money in the game. The most important thing we can do is keep the money in the game. Through Naira Bets today, we have a $50 win bet bonus on the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Bet $50 to win and earn a $50 bonus. You have to hit the bet. So if you bet and you win, you get a $50 bonus. It's not bad. Not bad at all. So basically, you're adding 1 point in odds to whatever horse you bet. So great value there. You have to opt in to do that on Naira Bets. Cross Country Pick 5, we got Monmouth Race 8, Woodbine Race 7, Monmouth Race 10, Ellis Park Race 8, and our race number 10, which, by the way, is a terrific race. Looking forward to talking about that with Travis. That all starts at 3:33, and I imagine it ends about 2 hours or so later. Saratoga Live, 12:30 to 7, 6.5 hours of tremendous racing action throughout the day, all on FS2. As promised, joining me from afar, a long, long way away. Travis, how are you today?
Good morning.
You got a tie on today. I'm pretty impressed.
I mean, I even dusted it off just for you.
Special pink tie here for Jockey Club Gold Cup Day. I'm very excited to see that. I feel special. Let's get right to work. We got a lot to talk about. And one of the things I want to talk to you about as we show a replay of War Smoke and, to a lesser extent, Sheriff Bianco, who both come back in this race. Giramonte scratched out of this race. War Smoke was a first-time starter, got bet here, blows the break, breaks about a length and a half slow, and ends up. Now, you know, it wasn't one of these breaks that he would have won, I think, if he didn't break badly, but it was a race that collapsed, and it didn't take him out of the race. Travis, I'm surprised to see you don't have this horse in your top 4 selections.
Yeah, he was my 5th choice. The reason why I'm against him today, and I'm really against him at current odds of 6-5, that seems
Me
exceptionally
too, even though I
short.
picked him. Yes.
Won't be surprised if he wins, but this was a race that completely collapsed late, and you can see they're just clustered up right about the 16th pole, and it felt like it was a very hungry group, and maybe he was going to look a little bit better on paper than he's going to end up being on the racetrack today. I thought there were some alternatives that made some sense. The winner of that race, Neuro, is 1 for 15, so it's not like it was the world's toughest field. I just thought I would take a shot against. Certainly could win, but a horse like this, I'm fine fading a little bit.
Well, I think there's another problem him as well, Travis. He was scratched out of the August 14th race that Giramonte was running in. So you got to wonder what happened that day. Why did they scratch him 3 weeks ago and he's back? Now, obviously, it wasn't anything major and he's coming back, but I think that is a point we're taking. I do agree at 6-5. And listen, I considered obviously putting your horse on top. I'm glad I didn't because we don't need to agree in all these races. And just for you, because I can read your mind, I'm going to show you the start of Suit of Armor's last race, both the pan and head on, and I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, just didn't have the best of beginnings coming out of the gate in here, and this is just a disastrous beginning for a horse trying to get going for the first time, going 5.5. Was hustled from there, which is a little bit of a concern. Not only did he get out slow, did he have a hard time finding his stride, which means even if he did break okay, would he have still had a hard time getting going early? But this is a good move for Brad Cox, second-time starters in turf sprints, 10 for 26, 38%, positive ROI. The winner went wire to wire. It just felt like a scenario where Suit of Armor could move forward in this spot. Maybe ultimately is not good enough. Did run a little bit late. certainly had some excuse early. I thought the price would be square, and it was a horse I wanted to take a shot with.
Well, I think he had to expend so much energy just catching up to the field to put himself in position where he could make a move that it's no surprise that he was sort of flat in the final eighth, because he made his move getting back into the race, and it wasn't his fault. As you saw in the head-on, he got just completely, he broke a little slow, but then he just gets the door slammed on him, where if you break a little bit slow and the door doesn't slam, maybe you find yourself more in the race. So I definitely don't agree, and that's an interesting stat you bring up. We'll see. We'll see. He also comes out of a race that was dominated on the front end.
Yep.
Other horses near, I think Sheriff Bianco is not impossible here, and he may be able to shake loose a BC Glory Days, but it just feels like he's had so many chances at short prices, it gets a little tiresome.
I'm just going to be against this horse today, and there's 12 races this afternoon. If this is the one that's going to get by me, so be it. Has had many chances, been right in contention at the mid-stretch marker in virtually all of his starts, at least here in North America, and has been unable to finish it. Until he does so, I'm going to be against.
Your long shot thrown is the one. Brian's Mission minus Citizen K for Horacio de Paz.
Yeah, had a bit of a wide trip last time. Looked a little bit green on replay. Some good stats for Trombetta doing these sorts of moves, adding blinkers as well. Just felt like they were trying a couple of things. Did not totally discourage himself or discount himself on debut. Thought he got a look on a move up. All
right, race number 2, 1 1/8 on the main track. And I want to start with the horse you have on top. And I agree with you that Grump's Little Tots is the horse to beat. Travis, this trainer stat really kind of bothered me. Rob Atras, 50% drops. They're bad. He's 1 for 8 in routes. And Rob is a trainer that wins. And, you'll often see these 50% drops with like 30% or something, and maybe the ROI is $1.60, because they're shortest priced horses, whatever. This is a bad stat, and I agree he's the horse to beat, but I couldn't pick him on top because of this stat.
That's fair. I'm a little bit less enthused about him. Not that I was particularly enthused to begin with some of the scratches in here, too, because I felt like this race was going to get hungry late, and I was really having a hard time finding some legitimate closers. Fort Peck, the winner of that last race, just ran a hole in the wind, a huge move for Diodoro here at Saratoga. So it felt like Grump's Little Tots might have been just facing some tougher horses and maybe find some of his friends in a spot like this with a raceful that was going to help him. He's very tentative. This was one of the races on the card today. I really didn't have a strong opinion. You have to pick somebody. I just went to him.
Well, I think one of the problems is the 2 horses to beat are the horses that you and I have in reverse order. And we'll take a look at Supreme Aura's last start. This is when he easily beat Heavy Roller. It will be a bit of a price in here. The problem is you're not claiming horses on July 9th at Belmont to run closing weekend. You claim them for 40 for half the price at Saratoga. Yes, it's a $48,000 purse, blah, blah, blah. They come close to breaking even if he wins and gets claimed. And close. They'll lose money. I'm sorry. You claimed this horse to run him at Saratoga and try to win a race earlier in the meet, and not for $20,000. And I think you'll probably agree with that. So where has he been after running this terrific effort? And he's obviously got nothing but figures that make him tough to beat. But, I can talk about the trainer stat with Grump's Little Tot. Well, you can't ignore that this is a horrendous claim layoff drop down.
Absolutely, and I will say, too, I think the last race might make him look a little bit better than he actually is. He's a horse that has always liked the wet track. The pace was not particularly soft, and I did not like the drift out. I never like drifts out in horses that are winning for fun. It is often the signs of whatever it could be, physical infirmities, things creeping in, stuff not going well. And the fact they were unable to get him into a race early in the meet for a price that would allow them to get an ROI that was meaningful off the $40,000 claim, I was going to be a little bit against today.
Yeah,
sure.
Roaming Union last time was the time at the lower level, but Joel will be aggressive with him again. Here's my weird horse in here, and I actually considered putting him on top for a second, Acker. Because obviously Acker's recent dirt races are a joke, and he has absolutely no chance. Now, he did lose to horses like Limonite and Backside of the Moon and Empty Tomb. This is a horse on the go back in California that's got some pretty good dirt races. Now, one of them was a 1.5 miles in that Tokyo City, I believe he ran in there. But he also, I think he ran like an 84 and 88 Beyer. So he has run good races on dirt. And maybe he can't run at all anymore and his turf form stinks. But I considered picking him on top. I just thought that might be a little bit off the wall. But he is a horse I want to bet a few dollars on because he has dirt races that can win. And I don't trust anyone in here, Travis.
No, that's the thing. Like, you start to weave through this field, it's hard to make a case for a lot of these. The turf to dirt angle on Greg DePrima is not that great, but maybe the blinkers wake him up. The pace was slow last time, so I had no shot in there anyway. I hear you. Worse ideas on the card, I think.
I always like to try to get Greg into the number. He's a good trainer, just doesn't really have that many opportunities. Race number 3 is a rematch. of Pipeline and Cody's Wish. And I want to show the whole race, Travis, and we can talk about it. The race begins with Cody's Wish getting left, and Cody's Wish ran tremendously first time out. Has a big pedigree. This horse really blew the break. And not only blew the break, but he ruined Pipeline's day.
Mm-hmm. And you'll see going into the turn is sort of near the back of the pack. It's a little bit keyed up here, and I don't know if Joel was sensing a soft pace or he didn't want to fight this horse, but he's going to make this big sort of long sustained advance through the field and come on to challenge Pipeline. And I mentioned it on the show on Wednesday with Jonathan. Pipeline arguably ran the best race in this race, even though Cody's Wish had to make up the ground. Pipeline was doing the heavy lifting on the front, and it wasn't a particularly fast pace.
The third quarter was fast, Travis.
They did.
And that's
they picked
what
it up.
Cody's Wish made him do.
Yeah, they did. They picked it right up. And so now they're going to come back today. I'll be honest with you, I had a hard time. I wanted to take Cody's Wish because these are the types of efforts that you want to take horses back off of. But I just, as I watched from about the half-mile pole to the wire, I'm like, is Cody's Wish even really that good? And then Pipeline with that big step forward and was validated by the return effort of Vindictive a little bit the other day. I felt like I wanted to go back to Pipeline one more time, and maybe that last race was not a fluke. His first race was a slow pace. He was off it. The second race, they tried turf. It was a fast pace. He tried to come on late. This was a big move forward. I think he might have turned a corner. At least that's what I'm going to gamble on today.
I agree. Well, he was a horse that was working well with Miles D, and we saw Miles D run pretty darn well in the Travers, frankly, for a horse making his fourth career start. And you know, with Cody's Wish, he had trouble in his first start as well. He was shuffled back, or it would have been much closer. And maybe Bill Mott is thinking, you know what, 7 furlongs, maybe even though it's curling and the dam could go longer, maybe he's a little better one turn, 7/8 to a mile or something. The other thing about him is he's now had trouble in a couple starts, including this bad break. I think Pipeline ran sensationally. I'm not knocking Cody's Wish. It's going to be very hard for one of these two horses not to win this race. These are very good horses. There is another horse I want to talk about.
Is it going to be the 5? Because I'm very curious
No.
if you have any reads on that. What do you got?
I like the restaurant Baltazar, but it's spelled differently. North Carolina, I was talking to David Aragona, and he was telling me that this horse is apparently working unbelievably well in the dirt. And that's why an odd horse is running in a dirt race with a turf pedigree in the one race, the turf and the long layoff. It's a tough spot, obviously, to come in, but I think it is worth mentioning. And I know he's 5-1, and David probably made him that price knowing about the workouts. I feel like North Carolina is a horse that will be a very big price in the early pick 5. Now, I'm not saying to make him an A or B, you do whatever you want, but I think you want to have him somewhere in a backup on your tickets, just in case.
And it's interesting, one thing we didn't mention is Ubiquitous is stretching out and has early speed, which could potentially make for an interesting front-end scenario. So maybe this race does get a little bit hungry late. There's, maybe a couple of things could occur where a horse like North Carolina comes on for a piece.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting race, and obviously there's 2 talented horses on the outside. Race number 4 at 5.5 furlongs. I'll start with the sane horse to beat in here, and that's Risky Mischief, who you have on top and I have second. And she's just, on paper, better than these horses, Travis.
Yes. I tried to beat in this spot. In fact, I did have her a little bit farther down the pecking order in my original draft of picks. But then I went back and watched this replay, and then I looked at it through other races. She's just good. The pace was fast for this return race last time. She ran very well, though. Time limit's in good form. Time limit has some common running lines with some others in here. And she just has a lot of races on paper and numbers that are fast enough that just make her the horse to beat. And nothing clever to add more than that. I just think she's the best horse on paper. And when I tried fetching a little bit. We can talk about that here in a moment. I looked at your horse as well, and I just kept coming back to the fact that don't get too cute when you feel like you're looking at the best horse on paper, and that's why I'm there.
Yeah, I'm committed to making a small bet on the horse I picked, but I'm not an idiot. I mean, I may be an idiot, but I'm not such an idiot that I can't figure out that Risky Mischief is way the horse to beat in here, and is going to be a major exact on top of my horse in here. As far as fetching's fine. She just doesn't like to win.
Yeah, underneath type horse.
Yeah.
A lot of runner-up finishes. Has been in contention. Was in contention 2 back at Belmont. Couldn't finish the deal there. Has good company lines. Well, that last race here at Saratoga, time limit, came back with a good 87 allowance turf race, the important one, albeit it was off the turf, came back with a good figure. So the company lines in form is strong. I mean, won't be surprised if she's right there in the end. She just does not like that winner's circle.
Yeah, I mean, she always doesn't like to win, and she's not as fast as the favorite, so that's kind of a problem for her.
Yep.
As far as Fort Drum, I'm going to show her turf win last time. The problem is she had the absolute run of the race. She was setting a very moderate pace, so she was able to control on the front end. Now, she beat some pretty decent horses, and You know, Army Wife was 5th in here for what it's worth, but she's a dirt horse. Turf figures for 2-year-olds, even in the sprints, are rarely that relevant going forward. A 68 is easily a 78 to an 80 at this point, you know, a year later in her career. And Roy Lehrman obviously doesn't have a lot of horses that are short prices. But one thing that Roy Lehrman knows how to do is win. May not win at a high percentage, but when you have the horse in his barn, you're never going to win at a high percentage. This horse has ability, and I feel as though Roy may have a live horse at Saratoga, and this could be the live horse for him. I don't know that she can beat Risky Mischief even if she's able to improve to an 80 buyer. But I know that she's going to be better than that 68, and I think she's a horse that maybe could at least be second, and she's worth pointing out in this race.
He's got okay, not great numbers, but he has done layoffs like this before. He has come off maiden wins before. The debut race, Red Ghost, greatest stakes winner for Ward, so the company lines are strong. I threw in third. I think she's got a big shot today.
Yeah, I think she's an interesting horse if you're looking for a little bit of a price, though obviously Risky Mischief, way the horse to beat. The Prioress, I'm sorry that Amendment 19 scratched out of here, but it is an interesting field because it's mostly horses we're not familiar with, Travis, and they're interesting horses in there as well. I do think, though, that we have to start as we move on to race number 5, the Prioress. And I'll give a chance for the picks to catch up. I think we do have to start the conversation with the number 6 in here, Super Sensational, because she is clearly the horse to beat, even though you and I have both picked against her.
She is the horse to beat. She's got some of the best races on paper, some of the strongest company lines. Her race in the Victory Ride is good enough to beat some of these on their best day. She's in good form. Her last race was solid. Bella Sofia, arguably the top 3-year-old filly sprinter in the country. But there's some things to go against her. I feel like this is now 2 races in a row. She's enjoyed, I don't want to say perfect trip. That might be overstating it. The test was a pretty good trip. Soft trips. Hasn't had to overcome much adversity. She did have to overcome a little bit of adversity in the 8 Bells. She was unable to finish strongly there. I just felt like her Victory Ride was strong. She regressed a couple of points in the test. The trip was arguably softer, and it just feels like she's a good horse to take a shot against today. It's not like she's a win machine. It's not like she wins every single time or that she always towers over a competition. I feel like she's just going to be overbet, and I'm against.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I don't think we both have her second. Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. And, you know, the other thing is she is the only horse coming back from the, excuse me, from the test. So I'd love to see her get rewarded for that. But I also think she's facing some very interesting horses, including the ones that we picked on top. And I imagine you watch the beginning of the Monmouth Oaks and you see it broke outward. You look at the running line, and it doesn't look like she necessarily had a significant amount of trouble. She made some run for a horse that's probably a sprinter in a route race to make it the lead.
I actually watched all 3 of her replays because she just felt like the type of horse that they're shipping up here for a reason. In her first 2 career starts, and obviously the Monmouth Oaks, she had legitimate trouble there as well, and she just ran absolutely massive. Going a distance she probably doesn't want to go. She is quick. She comes out of the gate, and she just instantly finds stride and makes her way to the front. Her races at Pimlico, she was very fast. Now, look, she wasn't facing some of the legs that she'll face today. But the Monmouth Oaks was an indication that she can hang with some pretty good horses at a distance less than her best, with a trip less than her best. The trainer's got good numbers going route to sprint. They're throwing the blinkers on. The workout is strong. I think, and when you look through this field as well, not for nothing, there's not a ton of pace in here outside of the inside too. I think she's in front in the first few jumps and is going to be extremely tough to catch.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing her run, and I'm glad that you and I agree about her. I think she is. Now, listen, I don't think either one of us is completely dismissing Oksana in here because she's a hard horse to know who she is exactly. And we'll take a look at her last race at Parks. I mean, she's won her last 2 races by almost 30 lengths. Now, obviously, she wasn't beating much, but I learned my lesson when I pitched Chub Wagon when she came to New York from Parks with these kind of big wins, and I looked like an idiot when she just galloped and is a good horse. This horse could be very good, Travis.
She very well could be. She's going to have to be a little bit faster early, I think, to compete with Edie, Meanie, Mighty Mo. The runner-up in that last race, the starter allowance type horse. My issue with the big figure win 2 back where she posted the 96, winning by 18, which is just insane. All of the horses in that race are sub-60 buyer type horses.
Right.
She's really been beating up on some soft competition. This is going to be a very tough test for her. And she's down inside with a legitimate fast speed horse to her outside. Won't be surprised if we're sort of having to eat a little bit of crow this evening when we find out that she's actually really that good. But for my money, I'm just going to have to let that happen.
Yeah, I'm a little less dismissive of you, but you didn't. Nothing you said was wrong. I mean, she has been running against much lesser horses, and she's facing some real horses in here, including the horse that you have third and I have fourth, Scylla, who I mean, that I know was an off the turf race last time, but I thought that figure was very legit, and maybe she's just turning it around.
I mean, I wonder what happened after the Beaumont. They gave her a bit of a freshening, and maybe it was she just needed some Cajun cooking down at Evangeline when she aired by 4 there. That was a fast pace, though, helped her up. But then she backed it right back up with another big figure, so maybe she truly has turned a corner. It's just a new filly now, and she's going to be coming from off the pace. If those top 2 do get a little bit wonky late, she's in form, and she could be rolling late.
Yeah, one thing I would say about her, though, you know, and I don't think Charlie Baker has a bigger fan around than I am. It has the look of a sort of loner, where maybe the trainer isn't licensed in New York, because this horse worked August 26th at Delaware. So if you're liking this horse, and I'm not saying you are at all, but if you are, the proverbial you, because Charlie Baker's taking over the training, I don't know how long this horse has been in Charlie's care, but maybe 2 days would be enough. Race number 6, take one more race before we take a break. This was the race on this card. There's always a race where you take about a week to make a pick. And every time you look at it, you just roll your eyes. And, you know, I wanted to pick in this race the number 5 on top. And that's that's Curbstone. Yep. Because this is the pedigree, right? A half to Proctor's Ledge, I think, right? Yep. Who won both stakes up here for Brennan Walsh. These connections, 4 of the 5 that those are related to are good turf horses. Brennan Walsh, who I think is a terrific trainer, is 3 for 100. And I put up that in the money percentage for a reason, because I want to tell a little story. They don't win for Brennan first time out. He's a terrific trainer, but they often need a race. About 14 years ago, I was in Las Vegas for a daily racing form exposition. And a person that I think you'll agree with me is one of the sharpest minds in the history of the game, Mike Maloney, was talking about betting and trainer stats and trainers in general. And he was talking about low percentage trainers in general with first-time starters. And he said because they have lower percentages, their horses will often go off at much bigger prices than you might expect. Because people know about these stats. And that may be the case, but that doesn't mean they can't finish 3rd and 4th. Yep. It doesn't mean they're horses that you want to just throw out of the race. You may not want to use them very strongly in your multis, but you're playing supers, you're playing tries. They can finish 3rd and 4th, and if they're 25 to 1, and maybe they really are 25 to 1 to win, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're as big a price to fill out your tries and supers. And this horse has too big a pedigree, and he's too good a trainer to just completely ignore.
And we've seen several first-time starters for low-percentage first-out barns run on late in races this week. There was a couple yesterday. There was a couple on Friday. On Thursday.
Well, Jimmy Bond should have won yesterday with that horse. That was a terrible.
Yeah, there was one. There was. I'm not going to be able to think of the names off the top of my head, but it's happened a lot this week. It's a very legitimate angle, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it's easy to dismiss these horses with the low first-out percentage barns, but running 3rd and 4th is a lot easier than winning.
Yeah, people like Mike Maloney make points. They're always worth following. And here, Iris C. from a dam who won I think the Turbo Club of America for trainer Chad Brown at Keeneland, right?
Yeah. So this is it's funny you mentioned. I went back and forth on picks. My original pick was the 9 for George Weaver. I went back and watched that replay.
Let's show the replay while you're talking about it.
Okay, sure. So this was a fine trip. Sat just off the pace, was within striking range. This was not an effort where I felt like just better horses showed up that day necessarily. I felt like he was there and just couldn't quite win. And I'm sort of questioning whether or not that race is totally legitimate going forward. You can talk about Nyquist Nix a little bit as well. The workout reports have faded a little bit on that horse, and I'm just sort of taking a stand against this July 31st maiden, and I'm just trying to find somebody creative. Irish C. There's some interesting statistics for Sugar McGahee making this sort of move. Second time going sprinter out with 2-year-olds. He's 5 for 27, 19% with a positive ROI. No surface qualifier there, because when you do put the surface qualifier in, the stats do drop off, so maybe I'm sort of making a story fit my narrative a little bit there. Was bet on debut.
Be careful with that, Travis, because who you're dealing with here.
I hear that. Was bet on debut. Showed some speed, though, and it's not like he was totally dismissed and totally out of it. Felt like, to my eye, a horse that wanted to go longer. And then I looked at the various workout reports, and apparently the turf work was solid. And if I'm against that July 31st race, not a ton, but a little bit, I thought Irish C was a viable alternative. Morning line odds of 15 to 1. I think that's a good gamble. We'll find out come post time.
I think our friend David Aragona likes the source too, and David pays a lot of attention to those workouts, and I obviously respect his opinion. Listen, I don't disagree. As far as Nyquist Nix, I was hoping that this was a horse that would just run better second time out, that maybe needed that start. Now, Mark Cassidy doesn't have great numbers for second-time starters in turf routes, so I don't have a lot to back it up. But the horse does have enough pedigree, and I thought, you know what, maybe I want the experienced horse, and I want the one that didn't look like he did that much running, and maybe he'll run better. But I'll be honest with you, I don't feel like I stand any solid ground. The problem really was the two big pedigrees are Curbstone and Annapolis. Yep. Annapolis is a gigantic pedigree. You've got Warfront, who's as good a sire as there is, and you got My Miss Sophia, who's good in the dirt and better on the turf for Todd Pletcher. The problem is Todd Pletcher's numbers with two-year-old first-time stars in turf routes are just atrocious overall. And as good a trainer as he is, he's 2 for 24 at Saratoga. They're just not really winning types, and it's Todd Pletcher, and a pedigree, and the horse is going to get bet. Now, listen, I'm not going to be surprised when this horse wins because you've got a significant pedigree, and Todd is a terrific trainer, but he just doesn't seem to win with these horses.
No, but apparently the workout on the turf on August the 29th, I don't want to say rave reviews, got positive reviews, not like was totally lighting up the world and it's going to be a steamer in here. It just felt like a horse that was going to get over a bet, but certainly could win. Also a Fulton Evasion Sunrise, who is a pretty good horse on grass as well. So a lot of pedigree there. Yeah,
no, I agree. And, the thing that people have to realize is if you're trying to get horses to the Breeders' Cup, you don't get a lot of chances, especially if you're starting now. And these guys, so maybe they are more primed to win. Maybe Brennan Walsh is more primed to win this race because then you got to go to races like the race at Keeneland or, the race, not the Miss Pilgrim, the Pilgrim at Belmont because there's so few opportunities to qualify for the Breeders' Cup juvenile turf races. So these races take on more importance, and maybe that sort of makes their connections more sense of urgency to get them ready to win the race. That's the first six. The pick six, including a couple of grade ones as well as another stake, graded stake. Right after a quick break to hear from our good friends, Saratoga Water.
Make business meetings exquisite. Make a weekend outing exquisite. Make a late night snack exquisite. Make a night on the town exquisite. For nearly 150 years, the Saratoga Spring Water Company has been producing the finest spring water available anywhere. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Travis Stone. Travis, you'll be back at Churchill. When are you heading back to Kentucky?
Probably Thursday or so. Roll out of here midweek, avoid some of the traffic, and get back down south.
Good. Yeah, heading back down Wednesday as well, but looking forward to hearing you call at Churchill as well. Always enjoy hearing your calls, and of course we'll be covering all of those races from Churchill, both at their 3-week meet in September, as well as their November meet on America's Day at the Races when we get back down to Belmont Park. Looking forward to that as well. Opening day there is Thursday, September 16th, race number 7. It's firsters, it's horses with experience. Let's talk about our top choice in here. Both you and I are giving another chance to Brigadier General, who was favored last time off a very good debut against Gunite, who finished second behind High Oak in his subsequent start in the stake. And High Oak, of course, all of them will be running in the Hopeful on Monday. He didn't run last time, but he kind of met a buzzsaw in that race.
I mean, Stellar Tap feels like he's on his way to greatest stakes at some point, right? I mean, posted a 78 buyer.
I have to say he's going to be the greatest horse ever. Steve Asmussen may get mad at me.
There you go. Brigadier General has always been well-liked out of the Dallas Stewart barn. The debut was solid. That most recent start, that was just a wicked pace and ran into a really good horse. Has come back with a solid workout on paper, is well posted to some of these. Faces a lot of firsters. I said to some friends who are watching from Kentucky, I said, if Brigadier General doesn't win today, he may never, because this is a spot I feel like he's going to move forward in.
Except be careful, because you mentioned there are a lot of firsters, so he could run into another buzzsaw. Now, I totally agree. I mean, all kidding aside about Stellar Tap. We'll see. Are we going to see him in the Champagne? Is he going to run in the Breeders' Futurity, or is Steve going to ship him out to California? I don't know, but I agree with you. I mean, that horse looked really, really good. I know the figure, but when you run a firster at 7/8 first time out, and I agree, that is a horse that really has an enormous amount of promise going forward. Let's look at misbehaved workout. He did not misbehave in the 2-year-old sales work at Ocala. This is a horse they paid a lot of money for, and isn't into Mischief, but the dam side pedigree, the second dam is more turf. There really isn't a ton of dam side pedigree, but it's a good-looking horse, though, huh?
Yeah, not only was this workout good, apparently the workouts leading into this race are solid as well. Gets rave reviews from those that watch those in the morning. That's too early for me to get up, so I trust them more than I do myself. They paid a lot of money for it, despite the fact that the pedigree's fine. It's nothing to write home about. That's a big ticket, though. Feels like this is a live runner today.
Yeah, I mean, much like the turf races, listen, you want to get the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. You got to start breaking those maidens because you got to get ready for whether it's the Champagne or the Breeders' Futurity, et cetera. It isn't that much time left. We both have Olympian in there for George Weaver. I just feel as though, and maybe you agree, George has got to have one runner in his barn, doesn't he? He always does.
He does. All 4 sibs to this colt have won. He's got good numbers in spotless like this: 10 for 46, positive ROI, 22%. Workouts seem solid as well, according to the reports. Feels like another live runner. And yeah, George is due for a 2-year-old to run up the score here a little bit.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the full to one of my favorite horses of all time, Songbird.
That's right.
She was, by the way, I want to say, one of the single best 2-year-olds I've ever seen.
Yes.
She was, she was a tremendous 2-year-old. I mean, she was obviously a tremendous racehorse, but as a 2-year-old, I just don't know that she ever progressed as much. She was so darn good as a 2-year-old, it didn't even matter.
Yeah, she was solid. She was that was a fun time in racing.
She was a tremendous racer.
A lot of good horses were running around that time. Galt. Bill Mott does not fire a ton with first-time starters. The percentage is a bit low. The ROI is not quite there. And it felt like with the Songbird connection, this might be a horse that just gets bet a little bit more than he should. And I'll be rooting, but I'll be against.
I'll say something else. This horse sold as a weanling for $400,000, and that's a lot for a weanling.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you wait to sell a horse like this as a yearling with that kind of pedigree?
That's curious.
Just was wondering about it. Listen, I don't know the machinations that go into that, and maybe there's a real reason I don't really understand, but that kind of pedigree, this horse could have sold for a lot more money once he got a chance to develop.
Yeah,
so
that's true. That's interesting. Yeah.
Race number 8. I've been waiting for Never Surprised to come back because I was extraordinarily, and this is the Saranac, by the way, the grade 3 at 1.16 miles. This is his win at Aqueduct in Central Park, and he just dusted Hard Love, who's gone to the sidelines. But Hard Love's a very good 2-year-old, and he started out looking very good as a 3-year-old. This horse beat the bias when he broke his maiden in his debut, and they rated him last time, which was absolutely ridiculous because he's fast, and you sent him to the front. Now, listen, I don't know if he's going to come back. I don't know. You never know if these horses can still run. But this horse was better than these horses as a 2-year-old, Travis.
Yeah, he's fast. And there's not a ton of pace in here either. And when we're on this inner turf going on a 16th, a lot of times you saw it yesterday with the, I can't remember the name, the 5-horse mid-card that our friend Nick Tamaro picked, went wire to wire. Once you get out
let him second, Travis. Roos.
That's right,
Don't
Roos,
give yourself that was like a humble brag. That was an embarrassing moment for
no,
you.
Not at all. You're the one that brought me into that.
Trying to pretend to give Nick credit when you really just wanted me to lavish praise on you. I'm embarrassed.
That was part of my elaborate plan for mid-card praise on a Saturday.
You won.
Never Surprised. I don't know what the plan was last time. It was actually really painful to watch. Especially after I watched all 3 of his races yesterday, and the debut was awesome. The Central Park was phenomenal. And then you watch him do this, and I'm like, oh, no, this just it was tough to watch. But
I was in my office at Aqueduct watching that race, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I really loved this horse as a 2-year-old. He beat me for a lot of money in his debut, and I was astounded by how well he ran in his 2 races.
Yeah. If he comes back, even if he improves a little bit or even comes back to that sort of form, he's going for fun, and there's one way to go with him. That's straight to the front.
Yeah, now it is a 1.16 miles. It should be noted the rails are down for the first time since August 22nd on the inner. I don't know that it'll be as pronounced as when we took them down last time when they hadn't been down the whole meet, but I do think being an inside speed won't be a bad thing. Now, Public Sector does draw the rail, and I know that IRAD's on him again, but I think the one thing they've learned from the way that Flavien Prat has ridden him when he's been successful is that he's been aggressive from the start to get position. Now, he hasn't run against a horse with the kind of speed of Never Surprised, but I think that IRAD has to come out running here. He's not going to run with Never Surprised, but he's got to try to get himself in the pocket. On the other hand, even if he does that, if Never Surprised the horse he was, I'm not sure he can beat him, but he needs to give him his best chance to win, and he is clearly the second likeliest winner at the very least.
Yeah, that's without a doubt. I'm a little bit against the Hall of Fame from a visual perspective, too. Annex, the runner-up, didn't necessarily have the strongest credentials coming in. I don't want to discount.
Well, he was good once.
He was good once. I don't want to discount Public Sector too much. He's run some pretty good races, but it just feels like he's now finding a horse that is going to have his measure. And, Chad Brown is such a good trainer. He does get a little bit overbet up here, in my opinion. And when public sector goes to post, I think he's probably going to be a point or two lower than he probably should. And maybe he's out of the exact. I find that hard to believe because I tried to find a scenario where that would happen.
I just can't make the others.
I just couldn't make the others.
I
I
mean,
tried hard. I tried to make Founder, who had that fast pace and the tail of the cat last time at
he was
Monmouth.
sort of visually impressive, but the pace set the race up for him.
Yeah, he stormed home. I was sort of hoping that pace didn't come back fast because I was hoping, if it was a slow pace and he did that, I would have actually got pretty interested in him here. Mose, the horse to his outsides, had a perfect trip in that allowance win at Monmouth. You just weaved through that like the king. I don't know how he gave up the easy lead in the Kent last time.
He did beat the horse that came back to win the Virginia Derby for what it's worth in his last start. The horse who was third.
Fair. That's not nothing.
No, maybe he could improve, but I'm not a big fan either. And he's, his advantage would be his speed. It would never surprise in here unless they decide to not win again. He's going to the front in this race. And one thing about Todd, he's not rating speed horses. I'll say something else about public sector, and you know that I'm rooting for him, but I'm not convinced he's not a little better one-turn mile type. And I'm not a big one-turn, two-turn guy, but I think the best race he's ever run was two back. Even though it wasn't as good a fig as last time. And his last race was fine, but he got a very, very good trip. He overcame a monstrously slow pace in that race and almost won the race with a wide trip. I thought he ran terrifically two back, and I wonder if he necessarily won't get better as the distances stretch out. I could be wrong.
That's fair. No, I agree. That race two back was awesome. When it went wire to wire, pace was slow. Big effort.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and we'll see if Never Surprise. Listen, the other thing about Never Surprise, maybe he's just not, we haven't seen him in a long time. Something obviously went wrong last time as well, so you can't be 100% confident he's going to come back and be that horse, but you want these horses to. Because I'll tell you something. He has a chance, this talent, they have to be thinking Hill Prince and Hollywood Derby for him as well as the others in here. But this is a horse that could be, to me, as a 2-year-old, showed grade 1 turf quality.
And, you think of speed like that, races like Breeders' Cup Turf Mile someday. If you can
no, I agree.
Yeah.
Not getting there this year in all likelihood, but a horse that could get there. Though Mike Rapoli's probably watching and going, oh, he's getting there this year after he buries this field today. We'll see. But he is a good horse. At least he was. Race number 9 is a tricky race. I think you and I probably both flirted with putting this horse on top, and this is opening weekend at Belmont Park back in April when English Breeze ran second to Classic Colors for Christophe Clement, who turned out to not run particularly well in subsequent starts. I think you could make an argument that she's faced better company, boys two back, runaway rumors, and spongy in her next starts. But I didn't like her last race. And that scares me. But maybe something went wrong because Dave Donk hasn't run her back for 3 months. I do think she is potentially the best horse in this race. I just didn't want to put her on top, especially in the outside post.
Yeah, the outside post was a discount there. The bit of a freshening off that most recent start, which was subpar compared to some of her other efforts on paper. I'm right with you. It feels like when you weave through the PPs of her past starts, she's been facing better horses and might be just the best horse in this race. There's a lot going on here. That's a wide post. I just didn't want to pick on top, but if you're talking about any sort of multi-race wagers, I'm going to use her because I have to respect the fact she's got some of the best company lines in the field.
Have at it with Just Okay is not okay, who I have 4th.
Yeah, this pick might just end up being Just Okay too.
That's why I put her 4th, but I don't disagree with you.
I mean, this is I wrote down 6 numbers at the top of my paper and just kept trying to figure out who to do and who to use. She at least has a bit of an excuse last time in a race that completely collapsed. She wanted to get forward. She tried to race up on, there was 3 horses across the track. She raced up on their heels a little bit, was forced to steady. The pace came back code red. The pace completely blew up as well to several of the horses that are in here. She was bad from there. She was wide, but she was bad from there on out. She did not run in the stretch whatsoever. So maybe she's just not that good. But her race 2 back on time form, the figure fits with these. The pace was fast that day. She was right up and on it, won it fairly well. The 3rd place horse did come back to win, albeit in an off-the-turf race, so it's not like it was a terrible field.
It wasn't that good a field. That bothered me a little bit.
But she's progressed a little bit. And maybe, I'm just thinking, maybe if you can toss that last race with a bit of an excuse, she could be forwardly placed in here. I do not love her. Truly sort of like grabbed her number out of the hat in what I found to be just an impossible race to decipher.
And she's either going to be stalking Tax Me Not, or Tax Me Not won't show speed on the turf, and she'll be in front, which I think is an advantage for her. And I don't disagree. She's a horse that I definitely was juggling while I was doing this race. And you're supposed to take horses that were forward in that race, not a horse like Kara's Dreamer, who I bet that day lost by a nose, but she took advantage of the collapse. The thing about Kara's Dreamer is It's not her race 2 back I like her out of. It's her last race that I like her out of, because she was 2.5 to 3 wide in the first turn and 2 to 3 wide in the second turn and 5 wide in the stretch. And that was the real strong gold rail period on the inner turf. And if you didn't save ground in those races, like Pure Bodie did for about 90% of the race, you had absolutely no chance in those races. And she ran in there. I thought she really ran for Mitch Friedman. I know she's 1 for 14 with 4 seconds and 3/3, but she's been in good form at Saratoga, and she was against the track last time, so I have to use her in this race. And the other thing is that Freedom Machine, who I have second, I'm going to be using in the next few days some horses that had ridiculous wide trips when the rail was gold. And Freedom Machine is one of those. Was 2+ wide in the first turn, 3 to 4 wide, and 6 wide in the second turn in the stretch. So she was compromised. And don't forget, she's one that had real trouble in that race before that. Now, she took advantage of the collapse, but she also got involved in that steadying on the backstretch.
She got fanned out pretty wide on that far turn most recently, too. I mean,
right.
She got sort of pushed way out there. I'm glad you mentioned her. I'm going to use her today. I had her as a 5th selection. I actually did the same as you. I contemplated putting her quite high in my selection. I just felt like she's a 1 for 14, sort of a closer type. She's going to have a hard time weaving through this field, but those are great points.
We'll see what happens. An interesting race. And this is a race that I think has the potential, and it may be horses you and I aren't interested in or didn't pick, to blow up the multi-race races late. Mm-hmm. Race number 10 is a terrific allowance. And boy, we have seen some of the best performances of the meet. I mean, a lot of it because of Bo Liam and his 2 races in allowance races with these 3-year-olds in sprints. And this looks like a very good one. We'll take a look at Ducali, who was tremendous breaking his maiden. And for those that don't remember, he was scratched out of the Speaker's Corners race in the paddock when I believe he flipped in the paddock, Travis?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he was good. And based on this race, he's probably in some ways the worst to beat in here.
The runner-up in this spot came back to run and didn't run particularly well.
Horribly.
Lost quite a few buyer points, but I also got away with it on the front end in this spot, so maybe that has allowed him to run a bigger number than he's probably capable of. Ducali is just the horse to beat. There's no two ways about it. That last race was good. The number was solid. Going to be forwardly placed in a race that you think about a big field, like the pace has got to be high here. The pace got to be high, and you weave your way through, and it's like, doesn't feel like there's a ton of one-way speed in here.
Isn't Baby Yoda the speed?
I think Baby Yoda's, which I think makes Baby Yoda a little bit dangerous. We can talk about him in a moment, even though that last race.
This is such a tougher spot.
It is such, but get loose on the lead, open up by 2, maybe gets a little bit brave, hangs on for a piece.
I feel like somebody, whether it's Tuggle or Ducali, somebody's got to go a little bit in here. You did lose the 2 and 7 who are potential speeds. You picked Hometown, who I have 4th, 1 of 2 for Chad Brown. Talk about Hometown.
I just felt like he actually wants this slight cutback in distance. His most recent race, he's had a good trip in behind, switched outside, but right when First Captain re-engaged up the inside, Hometown swap leads, and it felt like maybe he was just getting a little bit tired late, wants the slighter, shorter distance, because his best race on paper is going 7 furlongs. I think he's well posted in here. Just felt like an interesting runner, where the other Chad Brown crowded trade I felt might get a little bit more money. We might find a little bit of value on Hometown, at least in my opinion.
Well, according to the morning line, you're wrong. And David Aragona, unlike you, is a very good morning line maker. I'm sorry.
That was rough.
Resist. Travis did the morning line here one year, and he did a tremendous job. And people just butchered him because he didn't know that Ingrid Mason, coming in with a first-time start from Arlington Park, was going to bet off the board. He made one particularly bad line in a 2-year-old maiden race with a first-time starter working on synthetic. And from then on, he was crucified the whole meet for his job. And you did a great job, but he's such a masochist, you came back and did it the next year, too.
I will say the horse ran like a 20-to-1 shot, though.
There's always some kind of vindication. As far as crowded trade, I'll go back to my go-to video with him in the Gotham. But one of the reasons I like showing the Gotham is it shows you what kind of horse he is. I mean, this was his second start. He didn't break perfectly in here. Weyburn is a very good horse. He came and engaged him. He didn't quite finish. The Wood Memorial, I think 1.8 miles is too far. I really think that he's more of a sprinter type. And they tried the Preakness, and obviously that was a tough spot. It's not even like he ran that badly in the Preakness, considering what he was up against. And once Joel took his spot away in the backstretch, he lost all chance. And maybe coming up on the inside cost him second because maybe the rail got a little bit deep in the Amsterdam after we got that torrential rain. I like this horse. It's interesting. I felt like I couldn't pick him on top because I'm biased. I have a great affinity for this horse. And maybe I am overrating a bit. At 5-1, I would probably bet him in this race, but I still believe that he's a very good horse. He just needs to be in the right spot. The question is he going to get enough pace?
And one thing also is it gets back to a fast track today. It felt like coming out of the gate, he was spinning his wheels a little bit, trying to find his stride in the slap of that Amsterdam, and did sort of come with a bit of a rundown toward the inside, all fair points. The pace was my concern. There's not much of it on paper. I don't know if it's enough to truly set it up for him.
So no love for Olympiad. Now, maybe it's ridiculous to say, hey, look what Speaker's Corner did. You know, another Bill Mott horse beating a tremendous field in his debut. Well, Olympiad be the same horse as Speaker's Corner beat in Caddo River, and the same horse he beat in Greatest Honor, two horses that were pretty solid 3-year-olds. Caddo's River obviously went the wrong way. Greatest Honor we haven't seen since Florida after the Florida Derby, but a very good horse. Bill Mott's horses have really run. He doesn't have great numbers off these kind of layoffs, but I got to think this guy is ready to roll, and I wanted to pick him. I thought he'd be a square price today. I think that Speaker's Corner came back with a lot more hype than this one. This horse ran an 82 early in his 2-year-old year. He could run in the 90s if he comes back and he's still a racehorse, and why shouldn't he be?
And he runs the 90s. It's going to be tough in here. That last race was a soft pace. I thought he sat right on it. But for me, this was not about his ability. I think he's more than capable if he improves into his 3-year-old year to win this race. I just didn't like the layoff numbers. And I felt like you're asking him to run a pretty big effort right into the teeth of some pretty talented runners like Ducali and Crowded Trade and those types. It just feels like a very tough spot. We'll see what the price is. Adding LASIK is interesting. There's things to like. I just felt like maybe next time for me.
Oh, he's got to improve, but don't forget Speaker's Corner. And Speaker's Corner is a very good horse,
yep.
But he ran big as well. And if you can decipher the text that you and I just got, then you're a far smarter man than I am.
Sounds like Freddie Moe.
That's the man. Race number 11, the first of 2 Grade 1s, the Flower Bowl. And, you know, in moving the Flower Bowl in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, it's a juggling act because the Breeders' Cup is making a lot of races that were once extraordinarily important for championship aspirations mere preps. And with trainers running their horses less and less often, with more and more time between races, the Jockey Club Gold Cup, one of the most important races on the racing landscape, and the Flower Bowl were getting less relevant. And we're trying to figure out what we can do to keep these races as relevant as possible. And in moving it here, you mirror the 1.3 Ace of the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar this year, which is also around 3 turns. And so it becomes a very effective prep. And the way people were skipping races, maybe it is right to run it 2 months, not 1 month before, like the old days. If Warlike Goddess, who won with the consummate of ease last time, is able to duplicate the Glens Falls performance and it's good enough to win this race, then she probably is the best American hopeful for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, depending on what Euros show. She won with devastating ease, Travis.
She's got a little bit of help on the front end in terms of the pace of the race, with Dalika being one of those runaway speed types. But I don't want to discount what Warlike Goddess did. She just looked good. She inhaled the field with a quick burst of speed and then just absolutely cruised to the wire. She's now done this in almost every one of her starts. She has one bad race on paper. She is by far the horse to beat. But she's going to have to deal with an entirely different pace scenario, in my opinion, today. There's absolutely no speed on paper.
No,
and if she's going to drop back to last, maybe it's one of those condensed turf fields. It doesn't really matter. But there is definitely no speed in here. And for a horse that's coming from last, I did want to take a small shot. There's a couple in here I think you could with, though.
I don't disagree. Talk to me about Great Island. I'll tell you something. I thought about Great Island very seriously. I ended up taking her out of my picks, but I can understand the reason for her.
Her race 2 back at Pimlico was really good. That was an absolutely slow-paced race. Mean Mary, we know Mean Mary. She likes to go to the front and stick around. Both of them, the top 2 horses, came back to win. So she had no business winning that race. She tried to make up some ground. She ran fine. Comes back in the matchmaker. California Queen came back with a decent effort here earlier this meet. Juliet Foxtrot's no slouch. She's won some greatest stakes races in the past, so that was a good effort as well. And if you look through her PPs, in her maiden breaker at Churchill Downs in last year's September championship meeting, she was very forwardly placed, and I can't help but wonder, and you know, maybe if somebody knows Chad Brown and they want to text him and say, hey, there's no speed in here, maybe Joel just decides to take this race by the horns.
I'm not texting Chad Brown and asking him, that was the most weaselly thing I've ever heard.
Go straight to the front and maybe forgets to stop. Good numbers on paper, though. I thought she was interesting. Also because I'm a little bit against your top pick, La Seigneur.
These are valid points. We don't know with Great Island whether or not she can be effective at a 1.3 Ace. but I don't disagree. She's improving, and her last race was good. I don't think La Signori wants any part of a mile and 3/8. Heck, she didn't want any part of a mile and a quarter last year in this race. And we'll show her Diana. Interestingly enough, I would argue her Diana might be the best race she's ever run. Here she is sitting in the pocket, and when you are sitting in the pocket and you hit the brake of the turn, you better make sure you got room, as Richard Migliori told me many years ago, or this is what happens. You go from being a length and a quarter to a length and a half behind to being 4 lengths behind. And now she's even behind the eventual winner, who keeps her blind switched into the stretch. She has to wait until the winner makes her move until she can get out. Yes, she saved ground, but I think she ran extremely well in here. No, she's not a mile and 3/8 horse, but she is the fastest horse in this race early. And I can't imagine that they would run her in this race and not be thinking we're going to try to put her in the front end. So I agree with you. The way to beat the 3, particularly, is to be in the front end. And maybe she can get more distance if she's controlling on the front end. But I do question whether or not this distance is just too far for her, even if she's controlling on the front end.
We'll have to also watch how those early interturf races play with the rails down, because that might help her out as well. If it's fresh down there and she's able to sort of run a little bit farther than she wants to. I just don't know if she's good. I don't want to discount her too much. She did get steadied out when the real running began. Her one race on paper, the Sand Springs, 100,000 listed stakes. And other than that, I think she's generally just not quite got there. I'm definitely not convinced she wants a mile and 3/8, and that's why I looked elsewhere.
No, I understand all those things. I think she's an interesting idea in here, but I have no confidence. But like you, I'm not as sold on More Like Goddess as other people are. And I'm not trying to knock her, because she was super visually impressive. I mean, she flicked My Sister Nat off like a gnat. Mm-hmm. And she's a good horse, My Sister Nat. She should have won this race last year. She ran tremendous in there. I want to talk about Peter Brandt's other horse near American Bridge. Normally you see a horse that's running in lesser races in France. And she's running okay, but not particularly strong figures or anything. And then they go and gets a big win in Italy. And I go, well, sure, she's all dressed up off a win in Italy, and they're not usually as tough. She beat a good horse in that race, and that no-limit credit. Mm-hmm. That horse was keeping extremely good company in top races, like the Prix d'Espagne. I think she ran in that race. She ran in a Group 1, and I think she finished 3rd in a Group 1 at like 15-1. That horse she beat is a real horse, and she beat her like a drum in her last start. And I have to wonder if one of the reasons that Peter decided to ship her over is that the proverbial light bulb went off last time. In her start. So I think American Bridge could be a horse that as a 4-year-old might be turning it around. I know it was a lesser race, but I'm not sure that she's not okay.
Not to mention, this is a few years in now where some of our turf divisions have waned a little bit. Not like we have superstars in here that she has to beat. So, yeah, a fresh face might be just what this field needs.
Yeah, no, I think she's a little more interesting than I originally had. When I looked at her right away, I said, oh, these horses. And then I looked her race up. And if people are wondering about looking up Europeans coming over, I think the Racing Post website, racingpost.com, is a tremendous asset. It has almost like a formulator thing where you can put in a search for a horse's name, and you can literally go through the races it's been in and look who it ran against and look up basically the PPs or whatever they have of the horses they ran against and get an idea of who they've been running against. Were they just sort of more listed horses, or are they horses that have been running in group stakes? And this horse beat a very, very, very nice horse in her last start, a horse who frankly would be a player in this race. The 12th, the Jockey Club Gold Cup. The best Jockey Club, obviously, and the most memorable was Seattle Slew's loss to Exceller. I still can't get over Forgo winning the 1.5 mile Woodward, the 7 furlong Vosburg, and the 2 mile Jockey Club Gold Cup in succession in 1974. I know it was a long time ago, but that to me is just one of the great achievements in racing. And the last 2 mile Jockey Club was in 1975, and who better to have won it than Alan Jerkins, the chief, winning it with Group Plan and beating Wajima in Wajima's final career start after Wajima had battled with Forgo in his prior 3 starts.
My favorite Jockey Club Gold Cup. I convinced some friends from college. I went to school in Oneonta to jump in the car and head down. We went to the year Kitten's Joy won the Turf Classic, if I remember correctly, and it was Funnyside. It was pretty dark that day. It was overcast, and Funnyside got up to win. You could hear the crowd cheering from top of the stretch to the wire. That was the only Gold Cup I've been to is that one.
Really?
It was a lot of fun. It was a blast. Yeah.
He beat Newfoundland that day for Todd Pletcher. Cliff's Edge might have won that race. He got injured. He finished 3rd, and he ended up being retired after that. He might have won, but I remember that day as well. I didn't know you were there, but I didn't know you then. Forza d'Oro. I think the conversation has to start with him, even though he doesn't have the accomplishments of the others in here. He is the controlling speed in an absolutely paceless race, this is either his coming out party or he's going to get exposed.
That's a great way to put it. His discovery 2 back at Aqueduct was phenomenal. He just looks like a horse that is quality and is just going to keep getting better and better. It's kind of bizarre to think of it as Speightstown wanting to relish 10 furlongs, but when you watch him finish in this most recent race here at Saratoga, it looks like he's cruising fine. There's no shortening of stride there whatsoever, and it's not like he beat nobody in there. West Willpower was second to Code of Honor the other day, ran 101 Beyer in that spot. Trident Hit went out to Remington Park, ran third with a 92, so the form has held up a little bit. Controlling speed, there's one way to go for Forza d'Oro. I think he goes wire to wire today, and if he doesn't, then he gets exposed.
I'm not saying I expect him to get exposed, but I'm saying this is the day he needs to step it up.
Yep.
You know, Money Money Quarterback, I had bet in that Discovery, and he had everything his own way. He's a pretty good horse. He just destroyed him. He just ran right by him. I feel bad that I feel bad in general that my partner Anthony Stabile and my good friend is not here the last week, and he loves this horse. He was on this guy when he won it 10-1 that day, and he's right about it. I mean, he loved this guy as a 2-year-old. He's always been a horse that Bill Motch thought highly of. He's obviously a share of issues. I hope he gets over them because he's a horse. I understand he's got to improve a few Beyer points to be effective in race like the Breeders' Cup Classic, but I want to see him run a big race today because I think there's a chance that he's a horse that could step forward. But I'm going to tell you something. I don't want to discount the possibility that Max Player is stepping forward either. And I think one of the keys to his win in the Suburban was Ricardo Santana and surely Steve Asmussen putting him in the race last time, sensing there wasn't a lot of pace and making him more forward. And it's not like Max Player didn't have credentials, doing a lot in a very short period of time early in his career, and maybe he's a horse that's turning it around. And one thing that Steve Asmussen's had a great career, I mean, he's a great career doing a lot of things, but one is getting these kind of route horses to improve going forward. And I'm not sure that Max Player can't just be taking another step forward, and he can't be a player in this division.
It's actually a great point that the turnaround in form, but I thought it might be attributed as well to the wet track that he saw in the Suburban. A horse that handled the wet track at Parks to break his maiden, showed more speed that day as well, so I thought maybe that was part of the reason there. They were also forced a little bit with the outer draw to get a forward position for that, half run around the turn down at Belmont. The number was big, though. The effort was huge. Steve knows how to win these races. All fair points. If he's turned the corner, he's in the conversation for the top spot for sure.
Yeah, and another thing about him, one of the reasons I thought he was a player, I picked him second last time behind the favorite who ran second, Mystic Guide, whose absence is clearly felt in here, is that he was 5 wide around the track against the Gold Rail in the Pimlico Special. Mm-hmm. So I think his return race is a better race than it looks. He's still got an 88 Beyer despite being way against it. You're going to take the optimistic approach with Happy Saver. I hope you're right. But he didn't do any running at all last time, Travis.
No, he was pretty bad. Maybe he just didn't quite like that sloppy track. And I just respect the fact that he has run well against some pretty good horses. But I picked him second out of respect. I was a little bit more against Max Player, and now that we've had this conversation, I actually feel like I'd want to swap them, to be honest. You raised some good points.
You're just afraid Steve Asmussen's going to get mad at you next.
Maybe. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't like Happy Saver today. I did pick him second purely because I do respect the fact that he has the nice win in the Jockey Club Gold Cup last year against good horses, and I thought maybe there's enough of a reason for an excuse last time. But you talk about sort of the put up or shut up for Forza d'Oro. I think that's the same thing for Happy Saver.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, this is a pivotal race, and I'm sure Todd would say the exact same thing. Night Ops. I'm not throwing this guy completely out. This last race, you know what I thought was impressive about this last race, even before Art Collector did what he did, and we'll talk about that. He looks like Art Collector has just left him for dead. He might blow second here. Look at him. And he just keeps on chugging away and coming. And his 101 Beyer is the exact same Beyer the inside 2 horses have in their last starts. And then Art Collector goes, and he did something horses weren't doing at Charlestown. He won a race not on the Gold Rail. And he did it around 3 turns in Charlestown Classic. That was a good race against a good horse. And I think he'll be a bit forward in here as well.
It's kind of odd to think of a Warrior's Reward in a 10-furlong race having a legitimate look. He was a good one-turn horse. That last race was solid. The pace was slow, so he was close to it. But what I like about Night Ops is he's just always there. Look at his running lines. He's 6 wins, 7 runner-ups, 4 thirds. He's just a hard-trying, never giving up type horse. And in a race like this, which could get hungry late with a couple of these, I like him for a slice.
And he's getting better and better. He's a 5-year-old that is really turning it on at this point in his career. I think there's a lot of interesting subplots in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, the 12th race on today's card. Travis, outstanding job as always. Thank you so much. You need to head over to Naira Bets, and that's the proverbial you. If you're not a member, go to nairabets.com, use the promo code SPA200, and we will match up to a $200 deposit. Play through Naira Bets and keep the money in the game. Also, if you're a member of Naira Bets and you opt in, $50 to win in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. If you win, you'll get a $50 bonus, so essentially 1 extra point in odds. That, my friends, is value. Moving on, the cross-country pick 5, Monmouth Race 8, Woodbine Race 7, Monmouth Race 10, Ellis Race 8, and Saratoga, that excellent allowance race in race number 10. All starts at 3:38, the cross-country pick 5, the final one here at the Saratoga meet. And finally, last but not least, Saratoga Live, the one before the penultimate one, 12:37 on FS2. Once again, Travis, thank you so much. Travis will be joining us the last couple of days as well. It's a gorgeous day at Saratoga. We hope everybody has a wonderful day. The man, the voice of New York racing, John Imbrial, up next with a reprise of the scratches and changes.